Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for being with us. Well, in Governor Sandoval's State of the State address, we heard some big proposals for Nevada's education system, from the expansion of all-day kindergarten to the creation of a whole new school district. We could be in for a lot of changes. Nevada Department of Education Superintendent Dale Urquiaga is here with us now to talk about all of that. Dale, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. It's nice to be here.
Okay, so first off, I know you had a hand in crafting some of this policy. What did you think of the address?
So I think it was Governor Sandoval's finest hour, and that's a lot coming from me. I've known the man since we were 7 years old, so I've seen him for a long time in his public life, but I think it was absolutely his finest hour. He laid out a vision for Nevada and a very specific agenda for pre-K through 12th grade education reform, and both investment and modernization.
Now, you were telling me right before we started about how you kind of had a hand in researching and putting together this policy. Tell me how that went down and what he asked you to do.
So during the summer of this last year, 2014, I guess, the governor came to the department and said, I'd like to know what it would cost to really change the face of Nevada public education. And he sent us away to design a plan for him. And so working with my team, we were able to do that and took that information back. And as the governor has said in public, it had a little bit of sticker shock. It's an expensive proposition. And so we worked back and forth with the governor and his chief of staff and his budget director for the last 6 months to refine the proposal that he unveiled last week in the State of the State.
Now, one of the statements he made that I thought was interesting, a little bit harsh, interesting, was that Nevada's public education system, he said, is, antiquated, needs to be updated, modernized, and we've basically been operating under the same system for the last 50 years. How true is that?
So in 1955, the governor and the legislature commissioned a study of the school system at that time, and they built the model that we have today. There used to be 150 school districts in the state of Nevada, and they decided there should only be 17. They would align with county boundaries. And at that time, we had double sessions and overcrowding, particularly in Clark County, much like we do today. We're not quite that bad yet, but we have a terrible overcrowding situation. So they instituted a sales tax. That base funding and that governance model has really remained unchanged. We've added certain fees and taxes to the overall revenue mix, and we created the Nevada Plan for School Finance, which distributes the money in 1967, but that's essentially the model that we have today. Well, Nevada in those days was a very small state. It was very homogenous, meaning it was almost entirely Caucasian, and people here were quite wealthy. We were the first or second per capita income in the West. And so today Nevada is a very different place. We're incredibly and wonderfully diverse, but we also have high poverty rates. I believe the governor said in his address 1 in 4 Nevada children live in poverty today. So the system is really antiquated, and he has made a commitment to invest in education, but also modernize the system. He has said the system has to change in order to do the best job that it can for our kids.
And a long list of things to change. I want to get to those and kind of go over it in an itemized way, because it was, really kind of exciting to hear all the different things that are being proposed. I mean, depending on what where you stand on them, I suppose. But first, I want to start with the youngest. So. Preschool, really early education. Studies have shown that this is something that is really, really huge for getting kids up to grade level, starting early on. We want to see an expansion of that. Tell me about your stance on that.
Sure. So Nevada applied for and received a very large federal grant last year. It's $43 million over 4 years to expand our pre-K program. We have the lowest preschool participation of any state in the nation. And so we just don't have enough kids who attend a preschool. It's really critical for students at risk. If mom and dad or grandma and grandpa at home don't have books, preschoolers don't have somebody reading to them. And so what happens then, they start kindergarten or they start first grade behind and they never catch up. So preschool is really important for students who live in an at-risk environment. Kindergarten is equally important. Not all kids need to go to preschool, but the governor has proposed expanding to full-day kindergarten in all schools in Nevada, all elementary schools, by the end of this biennium.
Now,
so
will that be, excuse me, sorry,
okay.
Will that be free for everyone? Because I know right now all-day K is available, but a lot of people have to pay for it.
That's correct. Today, about 70 to 74% of Nevada's classrooms have a state-paid kindergarten option, but that means that the other 25% or so, you may pay for it, or it's not available at all. So by having it available in all schools, it'll be available for free. Kindergarten will still remain optional. Lots of moms and dads don't want their children to go to kindergarten. They want to keep them home till first grade. That's okay. But the governor wants every kindergartner who does present him or herself for school to have a full day option. So those two pieces will really build a great foundation for first, second, and third grade, because the governor's third grade emphasis really is on reading and literacy. So there's also, and you're probably going to ask me about this, but there's a program to invest about $27 million in literacy effort in those early years as well. So it's a really complete and very robust package for our earliest learners. It gives them the foundation that they need. We know that if they don't have that foundation, their chances of leaving high school with a diploma is about 4 times higher than if they get that great literacy base in the early grades.
Right, yeah, the read by 3 thing, that's something that he's actually mentioned before in previous State of the State addresses. I know it's been on his to-do list, maybe just not as feasible without the money backing it. Was that the case?
Yeah, you know, the districts put huge fiscal notes on these proposals when they've come forward before. A fiscal note is really how you kill a bill at the legislature. You say what it's going to cost, and if it's not in the governor's recommended budget, the bill dies, because in the last 4 years, there hasn't been any extra money. So this time the governor had the latitude to be able to propose some money that will address literacy in schools that are not being served by one of the other programs that he has proposed.
Yeah. Now the governor also touched on English language learners. This is big. I've heard from a lot of teachers, especially, who say this is what they struggle with most. This is their biggest challenge, especially as the population of non-English speakers increases in Nevada. So what's the emphasis going to be on that?
So in 2013, the governor and the legislature created what are called Zoom schools in Clark and Washoe County. There's 24 of them today. And a Zoom school is a high population of English language learners. Most are a 30% or 40% of the population in a particular school. Then it emphasizes preschool, kindergarten, but really literacy and reading centers, and then extra time for intersessions or summer. Most of the challenge for English language learners really is around acquiring academic English. It's not so much social English. If you go to these classes, these kids can converse with you and they can track in a conversation with you pretty well. But academic language, words like test, quiz, homework, it's beyond what they're hearing at home or with their friends. And so we really have to help build that academic foundation. So the governor will double the amount of funding for English language learners in the Zoom schools. It'll take us to almost 50 schools by the end of this biennium. So it's very exciting. About 15% of the children in our public schools are English language learners currently, and up to 30% have been at some point in their career.
Right.
They've exited. Their English has improved, and so they exit the system. But it is really the largest population we have right now.
Yeah, and along with the Zoom schools, the governor also mentioned creating something called the Victory Schools. Can you explain what that is?
Another really exciting initiative. Victory Schools will target children who live in poverty who are not in a Zoom school. So it'll be the poorest zip codes in our state. And as a practical matter, it looks like those are going to be in Clark County, probably Nye, and maybe Humboldt. So there'll be some rural poverty issues there, but also some inner city poverty in Clark County. So we want to have money for at-risk students who live in poverty. So part of this, the governor's plan is if we have Victory Schools, which will receive certain strategies we will pay for with the Victory School money, we have Zoom schools, that allows us to move towards modernizing our school finance plan, the Nevada plan for school finance that I referenced, by including that funding for students on an ongoing basis. So we start with these programs, but then over the next couple of biennia, we can build in what are called student weights, where you add a little bit of money for each student who falls in that category.
Right. Now, along with modernization also obviously comes an increase in technology. We know how important that is, and I think the number was $50 million?
$50 million.
$50 million pledged for school technology. Okay, so what is that going to buy specifically?
Right, so this is a great program. The Commission on Educational Technology, which is a government entity appointed by the governor and the legislature, worked with the Department of Education and the school districts to create a plan it's called a one-to-one plan. Only the state of Maine has a fully deployed one-to-one plan. One-to-one means one device per one child. People typically think of it as a tablet of some kind. Okay. We are brand agnostic, we don't care which kind. But more importantly than just the device in the student's hands, a true one-to-one plan comes with professional supports and professional development so that teachers can change the way they teach and can incorporate the technology into the classroom. The governor and I never want anybody to think we can replace a teacher with a computer. That is not what this is about. This is about putting devices in the hands of children so that they can learn in the way that we know that they live their lives and the way they're going to work. So that program, $50 million, will start us out in middle schools. We'll do whole schools at a time over the first 2 years, and then we'll work our way through all middle schools and high schools. It's about a 6-year rollout to completely provide a one-to-one technology plan that includes professional development. So it's really exciting. It's a big investment, but it's what this century is all about. It's what the governor calls the new Nevada. These are STEM workers and future engineers. We got to get them online and with an iPad learning as quickly as we can.
And big investment, it's something that has to be constantly updated too, because as technology changes, we can't have them using antiquated stuff.
Right.
So is there a plan, 5 years from now when technology is completely different and everything they were using 5 years before that was new 5 years before is now outdated? Yeah,
so the way this program should work is that the state will make the first investment through this first 6 years, and that's about the time where you'll have to go back and refresh.
Right.
So the legislature will need to determine whether they continue to do it as a grant program in future years, or if it becomes a part of the district's responsibility for maintenance. There is a technology and library and textbook responsibility in our districts today. So we'll have to assess that as we make this investment over time.
Okay, now real quick before we go to break, I want to talk about graduation rates, because the governor mentioned Nevada coming in last in the nation in graduation rates. Not somewhere we want to be for sure, so putting some money toward that. I guess the question I have, $20 million, how does throwing $20 million at graduation rates, what programs do you put in to fix that?
Right, so a couple programs that the governor has pointed to specifically. Jobs for America's Graduates, that's a dropout prevention and then career retention program. So we'll keep those kids in high school, and then we make sure that they are working when they finish. It's a very successful national program. But also he has money for advanced placement. That keeps kids interested who are really high achievers, who then they earn college credit. Dual enrollment is something that we can fund. Same thing. I can take a class in high school and I'll earn college credit at a community college or university. So it's an incentive. But then we're going to this year give the ACT to all 11th graders in the state of Nevada.
And the ACT standing for?
I don't even know what it stands for.
It's like the
ACT,
SAT. Like the
right.
SAT.
Yeah,
okay, right.
It's another brand like that. So we've chosen the ACT for Nevada. And so we'll give that to all kids, and based on that information, we'll help them plan their senior year so they are more college or career ready. And that's what some of this money can be used for, are those interventions or transition plannings that would otherwise fall to the districts. So we'll have some grant money that's available for them. So a lot of it's just keeping kids in, and a lot of it is making them more ready when they do graduate.
Okay, great. I think that's a perfect time for us to take a quick break. But coming up on Face the State, we will be back with Superintendent Urquiaga with more discussion of the governor's education budget and a look at what's on his legislative wish list right after the break.